Hi guys, it's Hazel here at The Right Copy Girl, and today I want to talk to you about how to spark and nurture your creativity. Creativity is one of those things that's really difficult to quantify. We all know what it is when we see it, but we're never quite sure exactly how to describe it, and it's different from one person to the next. Creativity is the thing that keeps you motivated in your work, it's the thing that keeps you innovative, it's the thing that keeps you going, moving forwards, and constantly finding new and better ways of doing things. If you're an entrepreneur, creativity is really, really important to your business. Whether you have a creative business or a more corporate business, it doesn't really matter. That creative spark that you have that made you want to start a business in the first place is really, really key to keeping everything going. But creativity can be really, really difficult to find. Some days it's just not there. And some days it's just bubbling over and there's so much of it that there just isn't enough time for you to get all your ideas down. As a writer, I rely on creativity an awful lot, probably quite a lot more than the majority of other business owners, because my work is inherently creative. Everything I write requires creativity. And one of the things that I get asked more than anything else is how I stay creative, how I keep those creative juices flowing, how I manage to write as much as I write, because I do write a ridiculous amount. I spend all my time writing, not just in work but also in my spare time when I write fiction. So creativity is something that I interact with on a daily basis, and I know for a lot of people that daily flow of creativity can be really, really difficult to create. So what I wanted to do was just give you a few tips from my own experience on how to spark your creativity when it's not really flowing, and how to nurture it to make sure that it's there as much as possible. And what I aim for in my work is to find a good balance so that I have daily inspiration, daily creative energy, daily sort of outlets for my creativity, but that it stays at a manageable level. Now I'm not sure whether this is a creative person's thing or whether it's more to do with my bipolar and the kind of the nature of my brain in general, but for years I really struggled with creativity because it was either a flash flood of wild abundance or it was just gone. It was like one extreme to the other, and that's really, really difficult to manage when you're trying to turn that creativity into work, because you need regular income, you need to do jobs on a regular basis, you need to work on your business regularly and consistently. And if you're having creativity coming in these big, huge bursts and flashes where you get loads and loads done, but then suddenly, you know, it's gone and you can't do a thing for days or weeks or sometimes even months, that's just not conducive to running a business at all. So since I became an entrepreneur, I've tried really, really hard to manage that sort of swinging pendulum of creativity and get myself into a few really good habits that keep it flowing consistently and steadily, so that it is usually there when I need it. Now there are still days when it's just wherever it is, I don't know where it is, it just goes. There are normally days when I'm not feeling well, but the rest of the time I do manage to keep it quite consistent and regular. So these are some of the habits that I've got into that helped me create that consistency, and that helped me to spark my creativity when it's not there and it's missing and I need to get it back. One of the main habits that I've developed doing on a daily basis is what I like to call deep thought massage, which may sound like a bit of a peculiar thing, but if you stop and think about it, how often do you actually think deep thoughts? By which I mean, how often do you actually take the time to pause and think about normal, mundane, everyday issues or situations or things that you do, things that you want? How often do you actually stop and really think about them in a way that goes far beyond sort of surface level? How often do you actually kind of dig deeper and figure out exactly why you're doing something, or why you want something, or why other people might be doing things, or how it is that certain situations arise. And this is a really, really useful technique to use if you are doing anything to do with mindfulness, if you're trying to improve your mindfulness, or just improve your self-awareness. So this can be very useful for a lot of things, but I also find it extremely useful for sparking my creativity, because simply taking the time to relax and think helps me to kind of tap in to whatever part of my brain it is that thinks about things in a peculiar way, or thinks about things in a different way, that thinks about things in the way that makes me creative and makes my creativity work the way it does. Now, my creativity will not be the same as yours, nobody's is, so it's no good me telling you exactly what I think about, but if you think about the amount of time that you spend in a day working and you know, doing various other things that you have to do, running errands, you know, doing the housework, various other things that you have to do, and how much time you spend relaxing, how many of you try really, really hard to avoid thinking when you are trying to relax? When you're trying to relax, how many of you just like to switch off? So you stick the telly on, you read a mindless book, you know, you go out with your friends and have a few drinks, and you have a nice conversation, but you don't really, you know, talk about anything important. You try to just sort of keep it light and easy and, you know, nice and relaxing, because you're trying to relax. And thinking often isn't conducive to relaxing, because the more you think, the more stressed you get, the more anxious you get, the more worried you get, the more upset you get about things that are bothering you, or just generally the more effort you are putting in to existing, because you're taking the time, you're taking the effort to actually think about things properly. And that's not really conducive to relaxing. So most of us, when we're not working, when we're trying to relax, we don't really think. We actively avoid thinking, and if we catch ourselves thinking too much, we try and distract ourselves from it. So we try to kind of take ourselves out of that thought process and do something that makes us feel better. Because for a lot of people, I think thinking too much is not good. It's certainly, in the past, it's been very, very bad for me, and for anybody else that suffers from depression or other mental health issues. Spending too much time dwelling on your own thoughts can be really negative, but you can turn it to a really good positive advantage if you start to purposefully kind of direct your thoughts and that deep thinking process at things that are going to help you get creative. And that doesn't just mean creative in your work, that can just mean creative in your life, you know, in general. So if you've been wrestling with a problem or an issue in your work, or something new that you have to do, that you're not quite sure exactly how to do it, or an existing, you know, product or service or something that you do on a daily basis that you don't feel is quite working right, or that somebody's actually told you is not working right, you know, these are all things that there is a very, very practical advantage to actually sitting down and really, really thinking them through, because obviously they'll help you in your business. But the actual process of giving yourself permission to really kind of dig deep into them and spend quite a bit of time thinking through all the sort of variables involved, all the possible solutions, all the things that you've tried in the past, or the things that you might like to try in the future, the things that are most likely to work. That level of thought is something that we don't often give ourselves permission to do in business, because we always have so much to do. You know, you have a list of things a mile long, half of them are problems that need solutions, and really the only thing in your head is to find a solution for each problem as quickly as possible, cross it off the list and move on to the next thing, because you have to, because there's so much to do. So you often don't actually give things deep thought. You give them enough thought to solve the problem, you give them enough thought to keep yourself moving and to keep your momentum going, but you don't actually dig deeper and really, really think things through on a fundamental level. I found that if I just pick one thing, so it could be a problem, it could be an issue, but it could also be something positive, it could be a goal that you have, or something that you're trying to achieve, something that you want to produce, something you want to create. When I'm relaxing, when I'm off, You know, I'll be sitting watching telly and I'll have a notebook, or I'll have, you know, my laptop out or something, and I'll just make notes just as and when they come to me. I don't sit there forcing myself, you know, to like really concentrate on it, because I am still trying to relax, but I just let it kind of percolate in my mind, so to speak, and as and when things come to me I write them down. And I often find myself just sort of scribbling ideas down and making notes, you know, on a particular thing for a couple of days or even a week, and then at some point I realise I've actually got quite a lot of thoughts on this, and I sit down and go through them all and make some kind of sense out of them, and then I actually do, you know, sort of spend time really focusing on it, and just working through it all and seeing what ideas have come out of it and seeing what comes up. And if you do that on a daily basis, if you just always let your mind kind of drift and think about things a little more deeply than you would normally do, if you kind of get into the habit of doing that constantly, just letting your head kind of go where it will, and when it goes somewhere, make a note of it rather than just letting it kind of float off into the ether, you find that it comes to you a lot more quickly, a lot more easily. And it just kind of develops as a natural habit that you are in, that on a daily basis your brain just does that of its own accord. It becomes second nature, it becomes like autopilot, and that makes it an awful lot easier to actually maintain creativity on a daily basis, because your brain's doing half the work for you. You don't have to force yourself to be creative or try and make yourself get creative about things. It's just daily habit. It's like getting up and brushing your teeth, or having a shower, or any of the things that you do every single day without even thinking about it. Now, another absolutely brilliant thing to do to spark your creativity is to cultivate a voracious reading habit. This is something that I did years ago, and I do actually I think more than anything else, when people ask me how it is that I came to be a writer and how it is I came to be able to write the way I do, and about so many different things, the answer simply is that I read a phenomenal amount. I have to research a lot of different subjects for my clients. I spent a lot of time at uni doing research in academia, but I'm just generally interested in a lot of things, so I've read an awful lot. And I regularly have people, you know, I'll say something, or I'll know the answer to something, and people look at me like, how do you know that? The answer that I always give is quite simply that I read. It makes me laugh, because a lot of people get quite offended by this inadvertently. You know, it's like, how do you know that? Why is it you know so much? How do you always know these things? And I literally just say, I read. And they're like, well, I read too. And it can sound like a criticism, you know, like you're saying it like, well, I read and you don't, so obviously I know more than you do. But it's really not that at all. It's more the fact that I read a ridiculous amount on a very, very broad range of subjects. So I don't just read things that interest me. I read things that are important but not necessarily interesting to me. I read things that relate to my client work. I read things that relate to business. I read things that relate to the fiction that I like writing. So I read a lot of fiction in the genre that I write in. So I read a lot of urban fantasy, I read a lot of fantasy, but I also read an awful lot of fiction in all the other genres, even the genres that I don't like. And this is a difficult thing for a lot of people. They're like, well, why are you reading a book when it's not the kind of book that you like? In order to be a good writer, you need to know how to do things, but you also need to know how not to do things. So it's important to understand what it is that other writers do that you don't like. It's important to understand exactly what it is about different genres that you don't like. It's important to see different styles of writing, to see different ways of doing things. So as a fiction writer, as well as a writer, reading a very, very broad amount of things was extremely, you know, sort of instrumental in getting me to where I am today. And it helps me to kind of stay on top of things creatively, so kind of keep the juices flowing and keep myself, you know, trying out new things, trying out new techniques, or looking at things slightly differently. And that doesn't just apply to writers, okay? So cultivating a voracious reading habit, and by voracious I mean, you know, you read every day. You read a lot every day. You get through a book or two a week, if not more. I sometimes get through 3 or 4. So read about things that relate to your work, read about things that relate to your business, your niche, your area, but also read about other things that relate to business, other things that relate to industries that aren't really yours but could perhaps help you with yours. Read things that annoy you. Read things that make you really angry. Read things that make you think, God, I can't believe this person actually does things like this. This is such a bad way of doing it. So don't just read people you like, read people that you actively dislike. I think perhaps the best example I can give of this is I am quite famous among my friends for detesting certain books. There are certain books I really hate. So the Twilight Saga, don't get me started. 50 Shades of Grey, again, just don't even mention it. And a lot of my friends like these books, and they are always to a fault shocked to discover that I have actually read them. And they're like, why have you read them when you hate them? And the obvious answer is, how can I know I hate them when I haven't read them? How can I know that I don't like a book, that I think a book is bad, until I've read it and formed an opinion of it? This is one of the things that I've noticed with people, is that there are certain authors that they really dislike. There are certain, there are certain entrepreneurs that for whatever reason they don't like. Celebrities, actors, singers, things like this. And if you've never heard somebody sing, you might not like them as a person, but you can't actually comment on their singing. If you've never read a writer's books, you might think you don't like them, but you don't actually know. You've formed an opinion based on them as a person, and you may find them annoying, or you may find that you disagree with certain things and therefore you don't want to read their books. But unless you've actually read them, you really can't say that you don't like their writing. You've never read their writing. And also, if there are things that you find uncomfortable, things that you find unethical, things that you find to be bad business practice, or businesses that do things in a particular way that you don't agree with, or that create products that you don't agree with, or create their products in a way that you don't agree with. So I, for example, do not like any products that test on animals or anything like that. I try and buy vegan products wherever I can. That is an ethical thing with me. But that doesn't mean that I never read things by businesses that do test on animals, because they have their reasons for doing it the way they do it. And sometimes, as much as I hate the fact that they do it like that, and don't agree with the fact that they do it like that, and think that there is always an alternative to doing it like that, it's actually important to understand why they are doing it the way they're doing it, because you can't form an argument against something until you understand it, and you can't find for yourself a better way of doing things if you don't understand why the other guys are doing it the way they're doing it. So I don't make any products, so I don't actually have the issue of animal testing. But if I did make products, and I wanted to make sure that they were vegan, that they were animal friendly, that they were all natural. And I do in fact have a client who does create all natural vegan products, and she does it really, really well. But if I were creating things like that, I would need to know about the methods that I didn't like and that I didn't want to use, in order to firstly avoid them, and secondly properly articulate why it is that I don't do it that way. So it's really, really important for you to read people that you love, but it's equally important for you to read people that you don't like. You don't have to do it a lot, but make sure you do it, and make sure you read subjects that you wouldn't normally pick up. So every now and again I'll go into a bookshop, and I'll go straight for the fantasy section, and I'll be looking for a new fantasy book, and I'll pick something up, and I'll choose something, and I'll be walking out, and I'll walk past chick lit or true crime, or something that I really normally don't read, and I'll just be like, I suppose I should try something. And I will look for something that I think actually sounds as interesting as possible. So you don't have to look for like the most boring book imaginable and force yourself to read it. You can find things that you think you actually might like, but just do it in a genre that you wouldn't normally read. Do it in an area of business that you wouldn't normally think about. Do it for authors that you would normally avoid because you don't like them personally, or you've read something of theirs before and you didn't enjoy it. You know, because when you're reading, the thing you have to remember is that writers are constantly evolving and changing and growing. So you might read something and absolutely love it, and track down every single thing that this person has ever written and read all of it, and you will find things that you hate. Now, one great piece of advice for nurturing your creativity is to make like a tree. It's really, really easy to become stagnant in your thinking, in your business, in your day-to-day tasks, and just the things that you do every day. When you're having to do the same sort of thing day in, day out, when you're so focused on, you know, sort of building one particular aspect of your business that you neglect other areas of it, it's really, really easy to just get stuck. And it's important to keep pushing yourself, both personally and professionally, to grow, to constantly, you know, sort of push the boundaries, to constantly push your comfort zone, push yourself out of your comfort zone and make yourself try new things and do new things, even if you just do them to find that you hate doing them and that you realise that you never want to do them again. Just the act of doing them will teach you an awful lot and will give you a new perspective on the things that you already do and the things that you might want to try in the future. So growth is really, really important, and working on your own personal development, working on your professional development, so constantly trying to grow your business. It doesn't necessarily have to be about, you know, always pushing for the next income bracket, you know, sort of always trying to make more money, or always, you know, trying to bring out new products, always trying to bring out new services. You don't have to constantly be growing in that sense. That's a very sort of literal sense of making more of something. You can take what you already have and make it better. And so, you know, sort of certainly from a personal development perspective, personal development is all about taking what you already have and improving it and expanding on it. So I like to think of my business in that sense. It's good to get in the habit of just thinking about what is working in your business and your life in general, and how you can make that even better, and also how you can replicate that success in other areas that aren't working quite so well. Another really useful thing to do for your creative spirit is to just rebel a little occasionally. Go against the grain. Shake things up a bit. Take the things that you have and see how you can do them differently, how you can look at them in a new way, how you can just revolutionise them. Now that might mean looking at something that you're already doing, that you know works, that you've got working well, and seeing if there's a different way that you can do it. Not because it's not working, but just because a different way might work even better. I've noticed people have a lot of resistance to that, the whole if it's not broke, don't fix it thing. But just because something isn't broken doesn't mean it's working as well as it possibly could be. And constantly, you know, sort of challenging yourself to think of new ways of doing things that might work better is a really, really good way to not only nurture your creativity and get yourself thinking about things more creatively, it's a great way to constantly push yourself forward, push your business forward, and do that wonderful, wonderful growth that we were talking about. Following on from that, and this ties into the archetypes that I use in my signature blogging method, which is the divine blogging design. You need to indulge your inner seeker. If you're not sure about the archetypes and what the different ones are, check out the video that I made on that, and have a look at the seeker, because the seeker is a really, really important element of yourself to kind of nurture when it comes to creativity, because the seeker is always, as evidenced by the name, seeking new things and new experiences. Just find new things to do. And they can be small things like changing the way you walk to your friend's house, or they can be really, really big things like, you know, skydiving, or, you know, just something really adventurous that you've never tried before. But the more you try new things, the bigger your mind gets, the more you have scope to actually think about things, and the more you will actually nurture your creativity, because trying new things gives you new perspectives. It gives you new ideas, it breeds creativity. So the more you try, even if you just try it and discover that you really don't like it, you've still tried it, you've still tried something new, and that's still added to your internal world and your understanding of the external world, and it will just help your creativity. One thing I love to do to spark my creativity is to listen to music. And I know a lot of people don't like listening to music when they're working because they find it distracting. But I'm often the opposite. I often find I can't actually get any work done at all if I don't have music on. And that is what I call my creative medium, is music. So I play music. I'm a musician, not a particularly proficient one, but I do play the piano. I love singing. Again, I'm not very good at it, but I love doing it. So music for me is my kind of, it's my way to tap into my creativity, whether I'm listening to it, whether I'm playing it, whether I'm singing. It helps me to just open up creatively and let in, you know, sort of the creativity and channel it, you know, into something productive rather than it just being kind of a mess. So music might not be your thing, but most people have a creative medium of some description. Most people have something that they do which, for whatever reason, helps them to just kind of get those juices flowing, to get themselves in that creative mindset. So whether it's something that you actually could do while you're working, like listening to music, or whether it's something that you need to do you know, before you work or as a break during your work, like going for a walk. That's another thing that I love to do. I just like getting outside in the outdoors and just wandering around in nature. I find that's very, very good for creativity. So just find whatever it is that helps you feel more creative and get in that kind of open and creative zone. Now if you're really, really stuck, if you need to actually get creative, you know, sort of on demand, and there's something that you need to do for work and you just can't get yourself in that headspace, there is a really, really nifty little writing exercise that you can use that will help you with it. It's called Stream of Consciousness. And you literally sit down with a blank piece of paper and write whatever is in your head. Don't think about it. You don't have to think at all about this. You literally just write down whatever pops into your head. And you keep writing, and you just keep going and going and going, and you let whatever is in your head just sort of fall out onto the page. And the goal is not to create anything in the actual exercise. The goal is not for the exercise to produce something. So you're not trying to write a story or a journal entry, or you're really not trying to write anything at all. You're literally just getting everything that's in your head out. So there is something about having a totally open channel between your internal thoughts and what you're putting out into the actual world. Something about having that complete freedom to just let it all flow that really, really helps to kind of open you up and get you in that creative space. So that's a really, really useful thing to do, and I often do this in the morning before I actually start work. So if I've just sat down at my desk and I'm still half asleep and I'm thinking, oh, I really just don't have it in me to write this today, or I don't know where to start with this, or I don't know what to do, I'll pull out a piece of paper and I will just write for like 5-10 minutes, just whatever's in my head. And it just really, really helps to get me in that kind of creative space that helps me then get on with my work. Another useful trick that you can use from the writing tool bag is an ideas book, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a notebook, which I tend to make a very pretty notebook because that helps, that you just have somewhere close at hand. So you might have it in your handbag, you might have it on your desk, you might have it in the kitchen, wherever. You might be like me and have one in every room in the house. But whenever something occurs to you, whenever you have an idea, just write it down. You don't have to like write it down in massive detail or do anything about it, but just make sure that you always have a means of recording the things that occur to you as and when they occur to you, because you will always think, oh, that's a great idea, I have to remember that, and you instantly forget it. So just get in the habit of keeping an ideas book, and you will soon find you have an overabundance of creative ideas and inspiration just sort of sitting there. And if you get stuck, you can just flip through it and just read through the things that you've thought about, not necessarily because you want to actually start doing those things, but just because reminding yourself of your own creative ideas can actually help you get creative again. It's really, really useful. Another thing that I find to be a really, really useful habit for creativity is having a creative hobby. And it sounds like the most obvious thing in the world, but loads of people don't really have a creative outlet outside of work. So they get really, really creative when they're working, but when they're not working, they don't tend to do anything, you know, that's actually creative. So I write even when I'm not working, because that's one of my creative hobbies. I play the piano, I draw, I paint, I occasionally knit. Over the years I have amassed a vast collection of hobbies, from jewellery making to soap making to candle making to... I can't even list how many things that I've tried over the years. I'm currently in the middle of making a dream catcher because why the hell not? Just indulging yourself with something that is purely recreational and yet still creative will really, really help you to stay creative in other areas of your life. Now you probably, if you are the creative sort, already do this already. But if you don't, you should definitely start. And even if you do, just try and broaden it a little bit. Try and do new and different things occasionally. And finally, perhaps the best thing you can do to help your creativity is to really, really indulge your imagination. I have a very, very active inner world, so much so that I occasionally get lost in it and prefer to spend time living in my own head than I do in the real world. Which is perhaps not the healthiest thing in the world, but it does make me a lot more creative and it gives me a lot more ideas. And certainly where my writing is concerned, my fiction writing at least, is extremely helpful because I'm at a point where I can literally put myself in my story world and imagine exactly what would happen if I were that character and I was in that situation and I was doing those things. So I can see everything that they would see. I can see the whole world. I know what it sounds like, smells like, tastes like, looks like. I feel what they would feel. And I find that very, very useful for actually writing fiction. But developing your imagination to that extent that you can just take yourself out of your current situation and stick yourself in a totally new situation that you've never been in before and imagine what it would be like to be in that situation, to be in a particular place, to be doing a particular thing. It's a really, really good way of nurturing your creativity. It's also a really, really good way of helping you achieve goals. So in business and personal goals as well, if there is a particular thing that you really want to achieve, if you can imagine yourself having already achieved it in as much detail as possible, so you put yourself in the position that you've already achieved that thing that you're trying to achieve, it's done, it's a done deal, you've already done it and you've got everything that you wanted out of it and it's gone exactly as you wanted it to, and you imagine down to the tiniest little detail exactly what that looks like. Not only is it very, very motivating to get you to keep moving and working towards that goal, it can actually help you manifest the goal. So I'm not a massive law of attraction fan. I know the basics of it and I do follow Denise Duffield-Thomas, who is a money mindset coach, but that's really the extent of my knowledge of it. But I do know that if you really, really want something and you imagine yourself having already achieved it, it makes it a lot easier to get there. I hope you found that helpful. I will be back next week with another vlog. Do make sure you click the link and subscribe to make sure you never miss a video. And I would absolutely love to hear what you do to help your creativity, what you do to get your juices flowing, how you unblock yourself when you get stuck. And also if you are currently stuck and you need some help getting unstuck, do let me know. I will see you next week.